Good evening, race fans, and welcome into round number 2 of the Pro American Late Model Series here at the Thompson Speedway Motorsports Park tonight for the Thompson 150. Of course, going to be 150 laps up for grabs for what looks to be about 18 late model drivers making the grid here tonight. That said, they will have to be proving themselves in heat races to sort the starting lineup for these drivers. They're not just going to be going off of their qualifying times here tonight. The maximum grid size to make the main is 22 entries, so looking at our timing and scoring, it does look like there are 18 entries so far here tonight, so should things stay the way they are, everything, or better say, everyone will be making the main event here tonight. No consolation race for drivers having to try and make it off the cut line for this second round of the series. Qualifying is not yet in the books yet. We do have just over a minute left in it, but it does look like Kenny Tripp has taken the pole with a 20.54 here tonight. Kenny Tripp is coming into the race here tonight as the championship points leader, followed closely behind by Joshua Dube, another driver who currently is actually last place in the qualifying standings, so we will have to see how these heat races shake up the starting order here tonight and see if the second place driver in the championship coming into this race can't manage to get his way up there in the front with Mr. Kenny Tripp. That said, qualifying just about in the books here now, so how about we take it down trackside and take a look at our starting lineup for heat race number 1. Starting out on the pole here tonight, the driver out of Lewiston, Maine, driving the number 12 for Fast Track Motorsports, going to be Kenny Tripp, our championship points leader. His outside, driving the number 21 machine, is going to be Brett Spiegner for JBL.com. Back in third place, gonna be the 126 of John Friley Tandy. And to his outside, the number 63 of Joe Campbell for JNS Racing to round out our second row of this heat race. Fifth place, gonna go back to the number 17 driver for 4X Racing. That's gonna be KC Duncan in fifth position. Sixth place, gonna go back to Mr. Johnny B in that number 26 entry. Back in seventh place for row number 4, gonna be Jason Branch in the number 28 machine, also for 4X Racing. So 2 teammates back to back here in this heat race. 8th place going to go back to Justin Phipps in the number 89 machine. And finally, rounding out this first heat race here tonight, going to be the 37 of Arthur Hendren back in the 9th position. So, with there only being 18 cars making the field here tonight, all of these drivers will be making the main event, but this heat race is going to be sorting out the starting order for the actual main. So just because there's no risk of elimination does not make these heat races any less important. Going to be 10 laps on the docket for these heat races, so just a quick little dash for these drivers to try and get themselves where they want to start. They are going to be in alternating order, so in this instance we will be having 2 heat races. The winner of this race will start in first place. The winner of the next heat race will start in second place. Then the second place finisher of this heat race will start in third, and so on and so forth. So basically, this heat race will determine the inside line, and the second heat race just after this one will determine the outside line. That said, the pace car is off. Let's get this show on the road, race fans. Green flag up in the air. Kenny Tripp off to a very good start. Brett Spigner already having plenty of room down on the outside, and a little bit of contact there between John Friley Tandy and Joe Campbell, but no issues for either of these drivers. Campbell gonna send it down low and try and get his way around that number 126 machine, and it is going to work. Gonna cause Casey Duncan in that number 17 to have to check up just a little bit. 17 gonna be getting around John Friley as well. That's gonna be next on the booth. Then the number 28 in the U.S. Navy entry, Mr. Jason Branch, also going to be taking that low line to try and get around the 126, but it's not going to work. He's going to try it here again, going it way down low, darn near onto the apron in that number 28 machine, but it does look like Friley is going to hold onto the position in that number 126 machine. Currently looking at the closest battle on the speedway, a little bit further back in that number 26 machine, Mr. Johnny B trying to see if he can't make the low line work for him either, and it's not going to. You could see the rear end of that 26 getting a little bit loose off the corner. That's going to majorly kill his momentum. Up here, things have mostly sorted themselves out just a little bit. Jason Branch still trying to figure out some sort of way to get around John Friley Tandy in the 126, but he's tried the high line, he's tried the low line, he's tried just about every line that this track has to offer, and he's just not managing to make the pass happen. You can actually see a little bit of damage on that 28 machine where he potentially might have made a little bit of contact with John Friley on the start of this race, and now he's just trying to figure out some sort of way to get into the top 5 of this heat. And it looks like he's going to go for the pass, but it does not look like it's going to work. But they're side by side down the front stretch. Tandy is going to lose the position as he concedes it down on the low line. Gonna bump him back to 6th place, and now Jason Branch gets to firmly rest himself into the top 5 of this heat race. A little bit trouble further back. It looks like the 89 of Justin Phipps might have spun it just a little bit. He's keeping that late model pointed forward, but he was way lower on the track than I would expect any late model driver to be. But sure enough, he's trying to do everything in his power to make it work. Currently the last driver in this 9-car heat race, but he is not to be counted out because, like I said, there are not enough entries in this race to eliminate him from making the main event. So just a matter of setting your starting positions. Up in the front though, Kenny Tripp absolutely sailing away with this heat race as the white flag is up in the air. Kenny Tripp, our championship points leader. And trouble, that's an expired engine for Johnny B on the white flag last lap. Very unfortunate for the driver of that number 26. Hopefully he will be able to get that finish fixed up before the main event. And it looks like Kenny Tripp is going to be your first place finisher for our main event here tonight. Before we get started into heat number 2, let's see if we can't take a quick look back there and see what happened to Mr. Johnny B here. Looking at the driver of that number 26 machine, just getting a little bit loose off the corner. He slams on the brakes, and around he goes into the inside retaining wall. And it looks like the camera has frozen, which is always a good sign. There we go. So here we are for heat race number 2, race fans. Starting out on the starting row, going to be the first place driver. That is the number 85 of Brandon Kiger, who is actually driving a number 33 paint scheme, but he's going to be the 85 on the timing and scoring here tonight. Second place is going to go to the 99 of Tyler McCrae, the driver out of Chesterfield, Virginia. Third place is going to go to Al Hewins in that number 55 GNS Racing entry. Fourth place, out of New York, going to go to the 27 of Gerard Lawrence. Fifth place is going to go back to Mr. Mike Sukup in the number 45 entry. Sixth place going to go to Will Salamone in the 72, driving the Nickelodeon entry. Seventh place going to go back to Sean Patrick in the 40, with Thomas A. Mitchell in the number 6 car to his outside. And finally, rounding out this second heat of the evening, going to be Mr. Joshua Dube in the 9 car, our second place driver currently in the point standing, starting all the way back in 9th for this heat race. Like I said earlier, everyone will make the show here tonight. We do have just enough room in the main for all of these drivers with 4 cars of leeway. So this heat race will be starting just right now as the pace car pulls off, and it's going to be what's determining the outside line to start off our main event. Green flag up in the air. Let's see what these drivers can do for our second heat race of the evening. McRae and Kiger immediately making contact on the start there, and it looks like Kiger is going to be our race leader heading down into turn 3 and down the backstretch, but they're still side by side going into 3, and Kiger and McRae make contact again, and McRae's around, and the whole field passes him by just like that. The race is going to stay green. He still has that car rolling, but that's going to check up the whole rest of the field. Everyone is all bunched up here, and not a whole lot of real estate here at this Thompson Speedway, but everyone is making it work. Looks like that is the 55 of Alb Hewins trying everything in his power to make the low line work here, almost getting pushed down to the apron in some of these corners, but he is still keeping that late model pointed forward. The apron a little bit less treacherous on this track compared to some of the other short tracks on the iRacing.com platform. Generally speaking, not where you want your car one way or another, but at least here it just is the slower line and not the line that's going to send you spinning, be it into the grass or into the infield retaining wall. A little bit further up, looking at the closest battle on the speedway, as we have 3 laps under our belts for this heat race, looking at the battle between the 40 of Sean Patrick and the number 9 of Joshua Dube. Only 0.2 of a second separating these two drivers here, but 6 laps left to go. There is not a lot of time for drivers to be patient, and sure enough, that 9 car of Dube is not going to be, sending it down low to try and make the pass, which for the most part, from what I've talked to with drivers, does not seem to be the faster line around the speedway. But when you only have 10 laps to negotiate your way around the cars in front of you, you got to do just about anything in your power to at least try and make it work. And Dube actually is up 3 positions from where he qualified, so still having improved a bit through this heat race, but it's not going to be enough to break into the top 5 unless Mr. Patrick makes a bit of a mistake in that number 40 machine, which naturally is entirely possible. We've seen it happen plenty of times before, especially in short track racing. All it takes is one corner for things to go wrong, and sure enough, it's very nearly doing it right there. That was pretty heavy contact to the 9 car. He managed to keep it pointed forward, but going to knock him down a few positions and allow Alep Hewins to get up into the 6th spot. Very tight coming through turn 3 and 4 here, with 2 drivers side by side, and it looks like Dube is going to be scored as the leader of this little battle with 2 laps left to go in this heat race. Up in the front, Brandon Kiger completely sailing away with this heat race. He will be the car to start P number 2 if he just completes these last 4 corners without issue. Just behind him, Gerard Lawrence also having a pretty healthy gap built up between himself and the cars behind him. All of the battling still to be sorted as we come to the line. Going to be the 9 car of Dube, sending it real far down low, trying anything in his power to get around Sean Patrick, but he's not going to make it happen. Joshua Dube finishing back in the 6th position of this heat race. So sure enough, chat, no death in this second heat race aside from that spin for McRae very early on in the event. Now we will be getting ready for our main event here tonight. the Thompson 150. Looks like drivers are getting down to their cars now, so let's go ahead and look at our starting lineup for this heat race. Actually, I lied. There is actually a warm-up before the main event starts, so we get a couple of minutes just to kick back and relax and enjoy a little bit of short track racing. Just a few minutes for these drivers to iron out any last possible minute issues in these race cars. And let's be real, race fans, after some of the damages that we have seen in these heat races between the spin for McRae and the contact at the start of the first heat race, I would imagine these drivers are going to be spending this warm-up trying to fix a bit of the damage on their late model stock cars. Everyone else, though, making sure these tires have some heat built up into them when we get ready for the main event, making sure everything is exactly how they want it. And now, race fans, it's going to be time for the main event of the Thompson 150. Starting out on the pole, going to be the points leader of Mr. Kenny Tripp in that number 12 Hale trailer entry. To his outside, Brandon Kiger in the number 85, the winner of heat race number 2. Back in the third position, going to be the 21 of Brett Spiegner, starting off in row number 2 with Gerard Lawrence in the 27 rounding out that row. Back in 5th place, going to be the 63 of Joe Campbell for Moonlight Speed out of Northfield, Vermont, with Mike Sukup in the 45 to his outside. Back in 7th place for 4X Racing, going to be the 17 of Casey Duncan with Will Salamone in the 72 to his outside. Just behind KC, back in the 9th position, going to be his teammate of Jason Branch, also for 4X Racing in the number 28 machine. Back in 10th place, going to be the 40 of Sean Patrick, and just behind them, making up row number 6, going to be John Friley Tandy in the 126, and to his outside in the number 9 machine, going to be Joshua Doob back in the 12th position. Back in 13th, going to be the 37 of Arthur Hedren, with Al Hewins in the 55 to his outside, rounding out row number 7. Back in 15th, going to be the 89 of Justin Phipps, with Thomas Mitchell in the 6, back in the 16th spot. Back in 17th, going to be Mr. Johnny B, who had a little bit of trouble early on in that heat race. And finally, rounding out the field tonight for Droppin' Bombs Racing, going to be the 99 of Tyler McRae, who also had a little bit of trouble in his respective heat race, but still plenty of opportunity for these drivers to make positions back if they're starting in places that they didn't entirely want to be after their heat races. Going to be 150 laps up for grabs for these late model drivers. A very small fuel tank, limited to 30% of its original size. So pit stops are going to be playing a major factor here tonight, and we will just have to see whether they'll be under green or yellow. A little bit of trouble further behind. It sounds like contact between some of these cars. Everyone is still pointed forward, but there are cars all over this speedway. Contact between the 45 and the 17. That's Sukup around. And that's going to bring out our first caution of the evening, just like that, race fans. 150 laps up for grabs, but sometimes when all these cars are still bunched up right at the beginning, that's when things are most dangerous. Let's see if we can't go take a quick look back and see what happened to the driver of that number 45, though. Looking here at the 45 of Mike Sukup, has the number 17 Super Flow entry down to his inside. Just the slightest little bit of contact is enough to send that 45 spinning hard up into the outside wall. That actually Looks like there might have been a little bit of iRacing netcode there. We'll have to take a bit of a closer look at that. Let's see if we can't ride on the left rear suspension here of Mike Sukup's car and see if we can't see just what happened there. Sure enough, no contact made between these two cars, so that was just a tiny little bit of iRacing.com netcode, but simple fact of the matter is that's just how it is sometimes. Sometimes it's just a little bit avoidable. That is part of a little bit of what comes with online simulated racing. There isn't anything perfect, but a little bit of netcode, always forgivable, and it looks like Mike Sukup in that 45 is heading back out onto the speedway despite that damage. So nothing race ending for the 45, but you can see that the left rear is pushed in just a little bit from where he made the wall, hit contact with the wall, so that might be a little bit of aerodynamic damage on that 45, and of course it stings to be knocked back 12 positions, but still a long race ahead of him for this driver, and there's plenty of opportunities for him to get back up at it. That said, we're lining our drivers up 2 by 2 now. Going to be trying this thing one more time, probably more than one more time realistically. A little bit of contact between Kiger and Tripp on the start there. That said, the green flag's gonna come out, and we are racing yet again. Already trouble for the 63 of Joe Campbell, pushing it 3 wide coming into turn number 1, nearly 4 wide. Trouble for the 17. That's Casey Duncan sent back to the back, and that's a very damaged late model stock car with a whole lot of smoke coming out of it, but we are still green despite all of that. Brandon Geiger still our race leader. Things starting to single file out just a little bit. Everyone beginning to negotiate their way around each other and settle into a bit of a rhythm, but even then, back in the back, there's cars a little bit everywhere. It does look like Casey Duncan was able to navigate his late model back to pit lane despite the heavy damage, so we are going to be staying green despite that wreck. Currently looking at the battle for, let's call that about 12th position between the 89 of Justin Phelps and the number 40 of Sean Patrick, side by side going down into turn 3, and even further up, it's side by side again for John Friley Tandy and Arthur Hendren, but they got themselves sorted out just like that. Very different lines being taken there, and it looks like Thomas might have actually had a bit of trouble in that number 6 Cartoon Network entry. He did have to go a bit high up in the corner, but he does have it all working out for him. Things also heating up a bit up in the front. Brandon Kiger is your new race leader in that number 85 machine, with Kenny Tripp still just behind, but he's also having to look a little bit in his rearview mirror and keep track of that 21 entry of Brett Spiegner as well. There are cars all over this racetrack, race fans, but everyone is making it happen. And speaking of drivers making it happen, look at that 72 of Will Salamone starting to make his way up towards the front, but just in front of him going to be Jason Branch, the driver of the America's Navy entry. He is up 4 positions from where he qualified already, but actually is not the biggest mover of the race. He's very close though. That award is actually going to be going back to the 9 car of Joshua Dube. Joshua up 5 positions from where he qualified and looking to try and gain some more and potentially get himself up in a top 5 finish, or even better, contest the championship with our 2nd place driver of Kenny Tripp. There is just 10 points, make that 11 points actually, separating these 2 drivers, so getting back up there and getting a win could be a major deal for Dube if he can pull it off. A little bit further back in the field, looking at 2 more cars that are pretty close to each other on the speedway, and almost trouble back there for Mitchell, very nearly having a bit of contact with McRae, but he got it sorted out. This battle is back for the 12th through 14th positions, and looks like that 37 entry, Arthur Hendren, having to go really high up the speedway. He is managing to keep that late model going and actually getting a run on the 89, but it looks like he's losing a decent bit of momentum mid-corner from going just so high up, but it's working out for him on corner exit speed. That said, until he can get clear of McRae or Phipps in that 89 machine, he's going to have a little bit of discomfort. I imagine that his spotter is screaming in his ear just a little bit, with 89 actually going to check up a bit and back out of that pass. Side by side, back for the 15th position, Mike Sukup, despite the damage that he got earlier on in this race, still managing to get some spots back and doing what he can to recover from that very unfortunate lap 1 incident. And looking here down at the 99 of McRae had to start all the way back in the very back of this race after receiving a bit of a spin in his respective heat race. Had to start all the way back in 18th, but he's already up to the 13th position. Make that the 12th position now. McRae is on an absolute roll here tonight, and honestly, it's not very surprising to see. McRae has been very dominant in this late model stock car in just about every series he drives it in, and even after a bit of an unfortunate start for him, he is making that late model work for him. Looking back now at Mr. Johnny B, another driver that had issues early on in his heat race, currently back in the 15th position and looking to try and see if he can't get around that damaged number 45 car as well in a very deep send into the corner. And it looks like, oh, a little bit of contact there. Nearly a bit of trouble, but everyone managed to back out of it just a bit there and keep things pointed in the right direction. Back up in the front, though, Kenny Tripp getting some heavy pressure from behind by Brett Spigner, but just behind him also Gerard Lawrence and the 28 of Jason Branch, Jason taking that lower line and trying to make it work for him, but much like some of the other drivers we've seen throughout this race, the low line does not seem where exactly you want to be on this racetrack. It's certainly worth a try, because just about anything's worth a try if you're desperate enough, but for the most part, just about every overtake attempt we have seen on the bottom side of this speedway has not been particularly successful. But look at that, let's call it the top 5, top 7 actually. All these cars could be very easily put under a blanket. Everyone all contesting for positions here and taking some pretty interesting lines through the corner. That was 3 cars we all saw down on the apron on corner exit, and Dube's going to be trying to take the low line yet again. No such luck for him. He just isn't able to get the drive off the corner he's looking for to execute the pass on that number 28 entry, but now Joe Campbell's going to be trying the same thing on him. Saw him do it the last lap and see if he couldn't make it work for him, if the car in front of him couldn't get it to work, but no such luck. Things starting to spread out for them all, though, after those overtake attempts did not really work out and killed a bit of their momentum, but still a very close blanket under all of these lead cars, minus our race leader of Kiger, who has sailed away with almost a full second of gap between himself and P number 2 already. But 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, and 7th actually, all within 0.2 seconds of each other, so very close speeds between these late model stock cars. And looking throughout the field, it looks like everyone is setting pretty comparable lap times to each other, minus a few cars really far back in the back, but otherwise just about everyone is setting lap times within 21.1 to 21 flat. That is some competitive racing for y'all there. Very high for the number 21 of Brett Spigner, very nearly making contact with the wall, but managing to keep it off there by just, dare I say, millimeters. I don't have a ruler down there to check, but that was a Very close call by Spigner, but he's trying to do everything in his power to get around Tripp, and if it takes going all the way up high against the wall to do it, then that is what he is going to do in that number 21 late model stock car. The 28 of Branch looking a little bit to the inside of Lawrence, not quite making it happen, but definitely trying his best to contemplate it. And a very low for Doob there. Doob nearly almost touching the grass with his left side tires there, and frankly, if we had it paved, there's a very decent chance he might have thought about it. He is building up a little bit of a gap between himself and Campbell, so a little bit of breathing room, but Campbell's going to get right back in it on that corner entry there, getting a pretty decent run to catch back up to Doob. Doob trying to make this lower line work to get around the number 28 is ruining his corner exit just a little bit, just enough to keep Campbell close enough to make him have to sweat a little bit. Back in the back, though, battles breaking out a little bit all the way back for the 12th and 13th positions, and make that the 14th and 15th positions, too. Patrick, Phipps, Sukup, and Johnny B all contesting these positions here. Johnny B gonna back it off just a little bit, but even then, he was very close to being side by side with that 45 of Sukup there, but still only 34 laps in the books out of 150, so sometimes it does pay off to concede the position and just be patient. There are going to be multiple pit stops here tonight, so that is places where some of these drivers can try and look for time if they're just not getting it in their current setups. Phipps really trying to go down low there in that number 89 machine, and it's sort of working out for him, but at the same time, he did get a little bit loose through the corner last time by. Sure enough, the 40 of Patrick is going to make it work, and we have a caution out on the speedway. And it looks like that might be the number 28 of Jason Branch, the America's Navy entry, having a whole lot of damage on that late model stock car. Miraculously, not a blown engine, but if he does not pit now, there's a very real chance it could be. Let's see if we can't take a look back here and just see what happened to these late model drivers. Looking at our oh, it looks like the 37 actually had a little bit of trouble there. That's the 37 of Arthur Hendren getting a bit of contact, and that's going to send him around, and then get the 28 down into the grass, make contact with, I'm not even sure which car that was he made contact with, but that was a pretty heavy impact. Let's see if we can't take a look back here and see if who he got into. So he goes down into the grass here and comes back up, and it's going to make contact with the 9 of, I want to say, Joshua Doob. So multiple cars involved here tonight from a whole lot of an unfortunate situation. Let's see if we can't go back and get an onboard camera here with Branch on that wreck. Gonna be looking down from his GoPro mounted on his helmet, not a sponsor. Heading down into turn number 3 here. He has a little bit of contact, makes contact with the 37, ends up in the grass, comes back up on the track, and wham, just a massive hit with Doob, and that's going to send him down into the pit lane retention wall, and there is the engine. Very unfortunate for the driver of that number 28. That is a very hard impact, and there's a very decent chance that that might just be the end of his race here tonight. Only 39 laps completed out of the 150. That said, as things have cycled through, Kenny Tripp is going to be back in control of this race. Kenny Tripp was the pole sitter and is the points leader coming into this championship, so Kenny definitely probably a bit happy about that caution, because that is going to be putting him back up in the lead. Actually, it looks like no, it's not. Lawrence actually is going to be scored as our race leader. Actually, scratch that. One of the two is the leader. I'm not entirely sure. Our timing and scoring is not sure what to make of it. But it is an option here for the race leader to pick the outside line instead of the inside line. But once we come to the line here, we'll know for sure who the leader is. And it does look like Kenny Tripp is actually being scored as our race leader as we go back green. A little bit of trouble for the number 72. That's Will Salomon, who got shoved up to the high line just a little bit. And would you look at that, it's the number 99 of Tyler McRae back in the fray here, already up 12 positions from where he qualified. Putting on a heck of a run. He's just been claiming spot after spot, and that caution bunching the field up is going to allow him to pick up another couple of spots on top of that on that restart. That said, just about every single car on this track has pitted at least one time, Tyler McRae being one of the drivers that have pitted twice. Fuel definitely an issue for these late model stock cars. This 30% fuel limit on these cars makes pitting very much mandatory, especially at some of the longer races on the schedule, like Langley next week. I believe that one is clocking in at 225 laps, so fuel definitely going to be a concern for these drivers later on in this race. Speaking of that, drivers are allowed 4 sets of tires here, so tire strategy definitely going to be coming into play along with these fuel stops. Some of these drivers probably very thankful for the cautions that allow them to... Oh my! And that's going to be the 89 around, and I believe that's also the 26 of Johnny B down on the infield grass. That's going to be caution number 3 for the evening, and it looks like Johnny B going to have to take the tow back to pit lane in that number 26 entry. Let's see if we can't take a look back and see just what happened to these two drivers, because that was a whole lot of trouble very quickly. Currently looking at the 89 of Justin Phipps in that Budweiser entry. Going to scrape the wall a little bit. Scrape the wall again. That's going to put him up on 2 wheels and go spinning down into the infield. And that's going to unfortunately be a unsafe pit entry penalty for Phipps. So we saw how Phipps spun, but what happened to Johnny B? Because he was in an entirely different place on that track when that incident happened. But now let's take a look at Johnny B. And it looks like he just got loose off the corner there. Carried a little bit too much speed. Might have had a little bit of a jerk of the wheel seeing that spin up in front of him. And that's going to be some major damage on that number 26 late model entry. So let's mark that as 2 more drivers with some very severe damage on their late model stock cars. Possibly race-ending damage, but until drivers actually retire from the race, I'm not going to officially say race-ending damage, because you never know. There's an entirely possible chance that they could come back out of pit lane with, you know, another 40 laps in the books or so, and pick up some positions from other cars that have had incidents tonight. That said, speaking of cars that have retired here, Mr. K.C. Duncan, back in that number 17 late model, going to be the first driver of the evening to officially call it quits and retire. So that is the 18th spot locked down for sure by Casey Duncan. Drivers currently down on the low line to let these lucky dogs happen. Here in the Pro American Late Model Series, there's actually 3 lucky dogs rather than just 1. So the first 3 cars that are a lap down that are not involved in the caution will be given a lap back. So definitely something important to keep in mind. 3 lucky dogs instead of just 1 is not something you see every day, and I would imagine that some of these drivers might even consider incorporating it into pit strategy if it really comes down to it. That said, we're lining them back up 2 by 2. We're going to have to look and see if these drivers can get themselves sorted out on this restart. Once we cross the line one more time, we will be officially 1/3 of the way through this race, and we are only 20 minutes into it, so there is still a very good chance that this race will be done in less than an hour. 150 laps, I know, sounds like a lot, especially compared to some of the shorter races broadcasted on the channel, but all things considered, these drivers are making excellent time, and looks like the number 27 of Lawrence going to have a little bit of trouble on that restart, a bit of a slow start, and contact between Lawrence and Doob there. Doob in that number 9 machine up 10 positions now actually from where he qualified, and putting on a heck of a run. And right behind him is going to be pressure from Tyler McRae, another driver that has had an amazing improved run so far. That 99 machine already up 14 positions. Started at the very back, and now he's trying to work his way up and make the last to first dream a reality. McRae having a bit of a pressure from behind from Brett Spiger, but Spiger is going to back out of the corner. Now Spiger's having to worry about Kiger just behind him. Kiger in that number 85 late model that appears as a 33 on your screen. He did have a bit of an issue with the transponder installed in the back of that late model, so he is being scored as the 85 despite his paint scheme. Everyone now starting to sort themselves out a little bit, and Tripp definitively is our race leader, but he's got a whole lot of worrying to do right behind him. You can see that number 9 of Joshua Doob. Doob does have a little bit of damage on his car, but that does not seem to be holding him back whatsoever. McRae as well having to worry again from Spigner, trying to do everything in his power to get around him. Spigner trying to peak a little bit lower on these corner exits, but it's just not enough, and almost a little bit of contact there with Kiger there, but fortunately actually they didn't make contact. A little bit of trouble further back in the back. I'm not quite sure who that was, but someone just had a bit of a scrape against the outside wall, which, let's be realistic, race fans, is only natural at short track racing like this, and especially one with cars as close as they are like this. And speak of the devil, earlier in this race, we were talking about how Joshua Doob needs to win this race to try and get himself in the lead of the championship point standings, and now here he is up 11 positions and in control of this race, but right behind him going to be Kenny Tripp and Tyler McRae. McRae trying to make the low line work. McRae really trying to make this last to first. Oh, bit of contact there. McRae getting a very solid punch to the rear from Spigner, but all cars still pointed in the right direction, which is always great to see. Another bump from Spigner. Spigner really trying to tell McRae, get the heck out of the way. I want to get back up into the top 4. Well, we see it again coming down into turn 1. No, we will. Oh, sure enough, there we will. Another bump from Spigner. Spigner really voicing that he's trying to get around to McRae now. McRae holding down the 4th position with everything he can, though, and he's making it work for him. Up 14 positions, I would imagine that McRae is really just, well, certainly trying his best to get up to the lead, but at the same time, he's made such an impressive improvement. I would imagine that there's a bit of him that's just as interesting. Oh, and another tap. Incredibly loose for the 99, very nearly a spin there, but he manages to keep it pointed in the right direction. McRae definitely having to worry a lot about what is going on behind him. The last thing he needs after climbing from the last position all the way up into the top 5 is to get spun, so McRae definitely going to have to do a little bit of defensive driving, and maybe even potentially concede the position to Spigner if Spigner keeps the pressure up like that. That said, with a little bit of a gap forming between McRae and Spigner, now McRae's trying to see if he can't get around Lawrence and put himself into a podium position here tonight. Drivers trying to figure out if they can't work away down on that inside line, but it's not sticking for any of these late models. It kills way too much of the momentum, and it's not working. A bit further back, Kiger also trying to see if he can't get a nose in on Spigner. Spigner holding him off though. It's pretty much just been the same tail every single lap. Drivers trying to stick their nose down onto the inside of the car in front of them, and it's not working out. Coming down into turn 3, Kiger's going to be trying it again. Tires down onto the apron. A little bit of looseness off the corner for Spigner, but it's still not enough. Kiger just can't make it work for him. That number 85/33 machine just trying to muster every little bit of momentum off the lower corners it can. Sure enough, going to try and send it down low mid-corner yet again, and no such luck. You can see damage on the rear end of Spigner's car, so it's possible that Spigner has gotten a little bit of the same treatment from Kiger as he's been dishing out to McRae. Once again, though, these top 5, 6, 7 cars all within a blanket of each other. But further back in the back, battles are still happening. Mike Sukup just managed to get around the 40 of Sean Patrick. Sukup, of course, being one of the drivers that was involved in an incident very early on in this race. Currently looking at him back in the 11th position. He is 5 positions down from where he qualified, but he's still trying his best to get back up there, and slowly but surely he is making these passes happen. Up in the front, Joshua Dube still holding on to the race lead over Kenny Tripp. Dube 11 points behind Tripp in the standings, and if he manages to hold on to this lead for the remaining 70 laps, there is a very real chance that he could be our new points leader heading into the next round of the evening. But we're only just now crossing what is almost the halfway point. We will be at the halfway point at lap 75, so not even halfway done, and these drivers are starting to have a lot on their minds to have to worry about. Currently the closest battle on the speedway, they're going to be this blanket between these top 5 cars, minus our race leader, who has gotten a little bit of a gap ahead of him from the rest of these late models, but 2nd through 6th, and if you squint you could include 7th as well, all incredibly close to each other on the speedway, and all nose to tail just trying to figure out, is there a way to negotiate around these other late model stock cars? Outside of the iRacing platform, Thompson is a speedway that is known for being really good about having multiple grooves, but here on iRacing you have to run the middle line, and that's pretty much all you can have going for you, which is actually a little bit interesting to see, because on most of the more traditional short tracks here on the iRacing.com platform, you want to be as close to the apron as you can physically possibly get your late model, but sure enough, we see drivers here preferring to not be outright at the wall, but speaking at the wall, that's going to be McRae into the wall there, and that's going to allow Spigner to get right back up on him and potentially start using a little bit of the chrome horn again to see if he can't get his way around McRae. Spigner is going to back off just a little bit, but that could be to just try and get a run back up to him. Still only 0.2 of a second between most of the cars in our top 6 right now before there's a little bit of a breakaway with cars getting spread out throughout the field. And then we have our cars down on pit lane, and as an update on our pit lane situation, Justin Phipps, Jason Branch, Casey Duncan all having retired from the race, but Mr. Johnny B has not yet called it quit. He is still sitting in the driver's seat of that late model stock car, but he has been sitting down there for close to 12 minutes now, so Still potential for him to come back out and get back into this race and at least get a position up on Phipps, who is officially retired. Back up on the actual speedway, though, Brandon Kiger has lost a few positions, now back in the 7th spot. Joe Campbell getting around him, and well, he never actually managed to get around Brett Spigner, so still a position down on Joe Campbell, who is currently a position down from where he qualified, and looks like we are going to start having our... Well, disregard that. I was going to say, it looks like we're about to start having green flag pit stops, but it looks like that 37 of Arthur Hendren was just getting his late model down to the very low side of the speedway so he can let the lead lap cars by. Hendren officially the first car still on the speedway that is down a lap, and you can see him going all the way down on the apron there to let the leaders by, not wanting to impede their race at all. Doob in the lead with a almost 1.7 second lead now in that number 9 car. He's already up 11 positions from where he started, so he has been on a heck of a run here tonight, and he is putting down some incredibly fast laps. Last time by, he did set the fastest lap of anyone on the track with a 21:08. Which goes to show the tire fall off on these late model stock cars, considering that Doob had just set a 21:08, but the fastest lap of the race was a 20.68, so half a second of speed has been lost on these late models as their tires have started to degrade. I mean, 82 laps in the race, it does not look like anyone in the top 4 took tires on their last pit stop. From 5th all the way down to 11th, it looks like the drivers did take tires on their last pit stop, so tire strategy is certainly coming into play, but it does look like some of these cars that are on newer tires are still having difficulty making passes. For example, Kiger had a 25-second pit stop last time by, compared to McRae, who had a 12-second pit stop. So double the pit stop duration to put on some new tires, and he's still setting slightly slower laps than McRae is. But of course, part of that does come down to the fact that this is just an incredibly difficult track for drivers to make passes on. That said, speaking of Kiger is going to be trying and getting around the number 63 entry. No such luck for that number 85/33 car, but he nearly made some progress there. Still trying to do the old nose down on the left rear quarter panel technique, but really just no matter how new or old these late models tires are, they just cannot get any sort of momentum or run coming off of the inside line on this speedway. Gonna be trying it yet again, and still no such luck. A little bit further up, McRae in that 4th position, finally having a bit of breathing room, not having to worry as much about the 21 potentially bumping him. 21 certainly has shown in these past couple of laps that he is not afraid to use the chrome horn if it comes down to it, and the 63 scraping the wall just a little bit there. It almost looked like he might have lost a bit of momentum, but the 33/85 of Brandon Kiger still not managing to get around him. That just goes to show how difficult it is for these cars to make passes here at the Thompson Speedway. I think a lot of it is going to come down to pit strategy for a lot of these cars, and ultimately the driver that's going to win is going to be the driver that's the cleanest and just the most consistent at nailing their marks lap after lap. And so far, it's currently looking like Joshua Doob is doing just that, despite the damage on that number 9 machine that you can see the rear end is dented in a bit. He's still 2 seconds ahead of the race leader and of the 2nd place driver, and climbing. That time by, he set a 21:07 an entire tenth of a second faster than Kenny Tripp behind him. So Tripp, Lawrence, and McRae are all losing time on our race leader. Still trying to do anything they can to at least battle for the position in their relative battles, but right now our race leader is completely checking out here. That said, there is a little bit of potential trouble for our race leader. Currently looking at the number 13, or no, the number 6 of Thomas Mitchell. He and the 40 of Sean Patrick are starting to have a little bit of beads of sweat on their forehead, because Joshua Dube, our race leader, is right behind them. Sure enough, Hendren is the only car that's currently down a lap, so if they were to have the caution anytime soon, they both would be getting the lucky dog and being put back on the lead lap. But regardless of that, having the leader in your rearview mirror is a bit scary to see. That said, pit stops are underway. Green flags pit stops starting to take place. Brett Spiegner, Joe Campbell, Will Salamone, and John Friley Tandy all down on the pit lane right now. All 4 of these drivers making their second stop of the evening, and that is going to shake up our standings just a little bit. You can see that number 37 of Arthur Hendren pitting back out. He had a 22-second pit stop, so it does look like he took tires on that number 37 machine. We will have to see if it pays out for him at all. That's going to make Dube, Tripp, Lawrence, and McRae the 4 cars still on the lead lap. But we will have to see. These cars exiting pit lane are going to make lap traffic a bit spicy. Sure enough, our race leader is down on pit lane. That is Joshua Dube coming in to make his stop. And once again, scoring the 12 of Kenny Tripp as our race leader with a whole host of lap traffic to go around. The 12 managing to... Oh, it looks like there might be trouble. The 37 of Arthur Hendren on these brand new tires having a bit of difficulty. He's keeping that late model pointed forward, but it looks like we do have a quick look from our boys down in the TV truck. Looking at that number 37 machine on these brand new iRacing tires. Just a little bit too hard on the gas, and that's going to send him spinning around, but he does not get any contact, so he is still very much in this race, albeit with now tires a whole lot hotter than he probably wanted them to be. Tripp, McRae, and Sukup, the 3 drivers that still have not come down to pit lane for the, call it, second stop of the evening. That said, of course I say that, and now McRae is down on pit lane as well. So that's going to knock him down a few positions as the leaders come back around. Kenny Tripp, our initial pole sitter, still out in front and still in the lead. He last pitted on lap 36, so he is stretching his fuel just a little bit. Mike Sukup, the other car, still... Oh, well, now he's coming in and making the pit entry work. It is a very narrow pit entry here, and Tripp coming in for his pit stop as well. So Tripp finally pitting in, and that will be concluding our pit cycle here. So now, as we go through this cycle, it does look like Spiegner is going to be scored as our race leader. Yeah, Tripp does not have the opportunity to come back out. He is still down on pit lane, so Spiegner going to be your new race leader this time by, with Dube right behind him. Dube having several laps led under his belt. I don't think he has gotten as much as Tripp yet. Tripp back out onto the speedway now, and Tripp actually still on the lead lap. So Tripp is... Oh, trouble. Speaking of Spiegner, that's going to be Spiegner and Dube around. Both cars hard onto the pit lane entry. Thankfully, there weren't any cars on pit lane, because if they had kept going, that could be a big old disaster really quickly. So that is going to be our 4th caution of the evening here tonight. 103 laps in the books for the Pro American Late Model Series. Let's see if we can't get a replay of what happened to these two drivers. There we go. So looking here at Joshua Dube and Mr. Brett Spigner, both drivers heading down into turn 3. Spigner gets up into the outside wall and turns down into Dube. Not a whole lot Dube could do there, but get collected. Let's actually ride on board with Dube here on his helmet camera. Dube just coming out of turn 4, minding his own business. 21 gets up into the wall. He turns a little bit to avoid, and sure enough, Spigner is in his right front. So that is going to bring out caution number 4 on the speedway here. Kenny Tripp once again back in front as our race leader. Spigner down on pit lane as well, or as Dube's actually staying out after that little bit of trouble, but Spigner down on pit lane in that 21 late models. Gonna see if he can't get a little bit of that damage fixed up on the right front, and it looks like he's gonna be taking 4 tires as well. Definitely an interesting strategy coming out of the driver of that number 21 machine. The 63 of Joe Campbell also down on pit lane, same as the 126 of Sean Friley Tandy. These 3 drivers also looking like they're taking tires, so everyone probably a bit happy that this caution has come out to give them a little bit of free time to take tires, because trying to do it during green flag pit stops is definitely a bit of a demanding task. It can take upwards of sometimes even 25 plus seconds to take tires. Actually, looking at our most recent round of pit stops, yeah, some of these drivers having all the way up a 26-second pit stop. So under green flag conditions, that is a full lap, considering these drivers are setting 21-second lap times on old tires. And it looks like the lucky dogs are going to get their lap back. That's the 40 and the 6 of Sean Patrick and Thomas A. Mitchell, and also the 37 of Arthur Hendren, but Arthur's going to have a little bit of a scrape against the wall there as he works to get his lap back under this caution. So going to be 1 to go when we come across the line here. Let's actually take a quick look down at our field from the iRacing.com blimp cam. Going to be that 12 of Kenny Tripp, going to be our race leader coming out of this caution. Going to be at least 1 more lap under yellow. It does look like we are going to be going green next time by. But still plenty of cars still on the lead lap. Everyone, for the most part, has at least a little bit of damage from potentially scraping the wall or making contact with other cars, but that is not going to stop any of these drivers, because sure enough, it's like they say, that is short track racing, baby. And let's be real, if you're coming out of a short track race, especially one as long as this, without any sort of trouble, that's the 27 of Lawrence having a difficulty on the restart, having a big checkup on the inside line, but everyone's gotten it going now, and we're 3 wide down into turn 1. The 27 is going to back out of that. That was Gerard Lawrence pushing it 3 wide, going to back out of that move. He was not having it. Tyler McRae, bit of a crossover move for Brandon Kiger. Is Kiger going to make it work? Kiger down to the inside, trying to get around McRae. McRae getting loose, and there's a car around. That's the 9 of Dube. Dube gets it straightened out. There's cars all over the speedway, fans. It looks like everyone got it sorted, though. That was very impressive. I really expected there to be at least 1 car ending up in the infield grass there, but everyone got it sorted. Certainly shook up our current timing and scoring a bit, but everyone has themselves arranged nice and neatly there. And look at that number 21 of Brett Spigner trying to make the inside line work. He was all the way down on the apron. You can see definitely a pretty hefty amount of damage on that 21 car, and looking at the lap he just set there, it looks like he might have a bit of damage actually affecting his top speed, because he was the only car that time by to set a 22-second lap. Our race leaders were setting 20s, and some of the midfield cars were setting 21s, but Spigner the only car to set a 22, so he might be in for a bit of difficulty for the rest of this race. Currently looking at the battle for the 8th position between Campbell and the 63, or the 63 of Campbell and the 9 of Doob. This is actually for the 8th position. That 126 car is lap traffic, I want to say. No, that is John Friley Tandy. That is, in fact, not lap traffic in that yellow and purple camel car. And a scrape against the wall, I believe, for the number 72 of Salomon, it looks like, in that Nickelodeon car. Had to lose a little bit of time from a scrape against the outside wall, but still keeping it going, and for the most part, not having any damage on it. You can see... No, there's not any damage on the right front of that number 72 machine, so that might actually be not the driver that hit the wall there, but there was definitely someone making contact with the outside wall there. That was quite the crunch. Joe Campbell sending it deep down onto the inside line to try and get around Doob, but sure enough, not going to happen. Doob going to get loose off the corner and almost come across Campbell's nose, but Doob kept that 9 machine pointed in the right direction. Definitely a little bit scary behind the wheel of that late model coming out of the corner. And contact between himself and the 63. 63 going to bump him a little bit, send him off the racetrack. Side by side across the line, but Doob is still going to be scored as the leader of this little bit of battle. And trouble hendering around. The green flag is still out. He's got his car going yet again, but definitely a bit of a scary spin for that number 37 machine. He's going to come back around the speedway. He may be pitting in. You do see a bit of heavy damage on the right front of that late model. See if we can't get a real quick recap of what happened to the 37 there. Coming down into turn number 3. Going to make that turn number 4. And just the tiniest little bit of the tire on the grass is going to send him around. But again, no contact with the wall, so everything all good for that number 37, even if that is going to make him lose a little bit of time and potentially damage those tires a little bit. Up in the front, currently looking at Tyler McRae, who is definitely having a very good run here tonight. Currently up 16 positions from where he qualified, and looks like John Friley Tandy might have had a little bit of trouble. He's got it pointed forward, but we do have a message from race control saying he went off the track, but everything's looking good back here for John Friley Tandy in that number 126 entry. Currently, he is running back in the 13th position, trying to catch up to Brett Spigner. Spigner's been having a heck of a race. First up in the front, then back in the back, then up in the front and again, and back in the back of again. Spigner has just been all over the place, but with the heavy amount of damage on that number 21 late model, I think he might be a little bit resigned to finishing back where he is. Currently looking up here at Mike Sukup in the 45, Joshua Doob trying to get around him. Doob has led several of the laps of this race and is still trying to get that win under his belt so that he can be scored as the championship points leader, because that's what it will take to get him up in the front and over Kenny Tripp. But considering Tripp is our race leader, and he's our race leader without too much contesting him, Doob certainly has a lot of work cut out for him to try and get into the lead of this race. And that's going to start with getting around the 45 of Mike Sukup. 25 laps left to go here tonight, so bit of a alarm bell going off in some of these drivers' heads. Tick-tock, there is not a lot of time left to make passes happen. A little bit of and trouble. The 45 is around. That's Mike Sukup going to go hard up into the outside wall. Pointed in the right direction well, and I guess that certainly is one way to gain a position. So Mike Doob now up to 7th place. Still a whole lot of work that needs to be done if he wants to try and contest the championship from Kenny Tripp. Speaking of looking up in our podium drivers, currently looking at Tyler McRae, who is definitely happy with how his run is going, currently in the 2nd position. And mind you, he started all the way back in the back. Tyler McRae up 16 positions, race fans. What a heck of a drive by Tyler McRae in that number 99 machine. Looks like Brett Spiegner officially going to be going a lap down, keeping it down low to the inside there, letting the lead lap cars by. Definitely probably a bit of a sting for the driver of that JBL car. Having been battling it out up in the top 5 for most of the evening, and now all the way back to 13th and being scored as a lap down. Unfortunately, sometimes that's just how the cookie crumbles when you have these close short track battles like this. There's only so much you can do, and sometimes the unfortunate reality of just about any motorsport is there's always the chance that something will go wrong. That said, with pretty much everyone behind him down on pit lane or having already retired, Spiegner can race a bit comfortably knowing that there's an incredibly low chance that he will actually finish lower than the 13th position. And of course, if another caution comes out, he will be put back on the lead lap as one of the lucky dogs. 18 laps to go now, and Tyler McRae is still putting the pressure on our race leader of Kenny Tripp in that number 12 machine. Tripp, the driver out of Lewiston, Maine, he works or is associated with Tempsetters Mechanical, Easy Rental, Maine Mobile Truck Service. Kenny Tripp seems to know just about everyone in Maine, and with how he's running here tonight, it's not surprising. I'm sure Tripp has a couple of fans out in the grandstands right now. That said, that's not to discount Kiger as well. Kiger currently actually a position down from where he qualified. Kiger was the winner of the 2nd heat race. Still on the podium though, and looking to try and see if he can't work his way around McRae or Tripp. There's 16 to go still, gonna make that 15 to go when we cross the line. So a little bit of time for these 3 cars to make mistakes. Just like that, McRae getting into the outside wall and having a bit of a loss of momentum. That's going to allow Kiger to get right behind him. But Kiger going to back off and not employ the bumper on him, at least not yet. 15 to go now, gonna make that 14 to go as Tripp crosses the line. We will have to see if we get within these last 10 laps, if these drivers start to become a little bit more aggressive with each other. There is not a whole lot of room left for these drivers to play nice with each other. A little bit further back, looking at another battle between Doob and Campbell. These 2 drivers have been duking it out all race, and we're going to be 3 wide off the corner. The 63 of Campbell backing out of it just a little bit, not wanting it to be pushed 3 wide with Salamone. That could spell danger, but with 13 laps to go, that just goes to show that these drivers are willing to make moves, and that's exactly what the 9 car is of Joshua Doob is going to do. That might just be the first pass that we have seen all of this race on the inside line. But Campbell's going to give Doob the bumper and take it right back from him. Side by side going into turn number 3, Kiger is on the Doob is on the preferred line, so Doob still does have a chance here. Doob going to be scored as the leader of this battle as we cross the line this time by. And way down on the apron for the 63, that was incredibly low. That was darn near tires on the grass low, and evidently that did not work out very well for him. Luckily for him, that number 37 car just behind him, that's Arthur Hendren, who is a lap down. So he doesn't have to worry about Arthur passing him for a position, but definitely hurting his chances of getting around Joshua Doob. Side by side, even further back, this is for the 11th position. This is a battle between John Friley Tandy and Thomas Mitchell. Mitchell conceding the position to Friley there, but still side by side all the way down turn number 1 and down the front stretch. A little bit of scrape against the wall for Friley, but he's still keeping all that momentum going. 8 laps to go there. These drivers are really feeling the pressure, and you can see it now here. Dude getting around Will Salamone, just about. Salamone getting a better run down the front stretch, so side by side, these two drivers are rubbing their cars together. And sure enough, Doob going to make another pass on the inside line. It looks like it just needed 100 laps in order to rubber it in correctly, but the inside line might just start to become viable for some of these drivers. Either that or Doob is just using some secret wizard magic here that we're not too sure about to make the late model not lose all of its speed down on the low line. The 63 of Campbell, he's thinking, well, I just got passed on the low line, so why can't I try it with Salamone? And it actually is going to work. The 63 of Joe Campbell now being scored up in the 6th position, but Doob sailing away and in the top 5 yet again after those incidents. Kenny Tripp sailing away with the race lead just a little bit with 5 laps to go, 1.5 seconds between both of them, but McRae and Kiger still duking it out for 2nd and 3rd place respectively. Neither of these drivers have really anything to worry about from behind from Lawrence. Lawrence a whole 3 seconds behind Kiger and McRae, and McRae going to be using that lapped car, the number 6 of Thomas Mitchell, as a little bit of a space maker between himself and Kiger. So Kiger losing a little bit of time on him, but still 3 laps to go and a whole lot of lapped cars up in front of them that he's going to have to navigate if he wants to try and escape the pressure from Kiger. Another battle further back in the back with only 3 laps to go. That's Alb Hewins trying to get around Sukup as well as have to worry about that 37. 2 laps to go now. These two drivers are putting a whole lot of pressure on each other. Will Salamone also getting involved in this battle. 3 wide down the front stretch, and it looks like Salamone might be nearing out of gas with how he's slowing down like that. White flag up in the air, though. Currently looking at the closest battle on the speedway for 7th position between Sukup and Alb Hewins. Side by side down the front stretch, these two drivers are duking it out. But as we round the last corner, Tripp is going to be the winner here tonight, followed by McRae, Kiger, and Lawrence. What a battle between a whole lot of these cars, and another battle coming across the line. That's going to be Sukup and Hewins. Hewins is going to be the winner of that battle and securing the 7th place position. Even with 150 laps in the books, battles all throughout this 18-car field. But now that all is said and done, are we going to get a burnout out of our race leader, Mr. Kenny Tripp? Or is that going to be that for the driver of the number 12? He is rolling forward just a little bit. He might be thinking about it. And it looks like the answer is no. No burnout here tonight. And that is A-okay. But we'll be back in just a second, race fans, and I will be talking to our top 3 finishers. So don't go anywhere. All right, and we are already back, race fans, getting some interviews with our top three finishers. And first, of course, got us started off with Mr. Kenny Tripp, our race winner here tonight. I'm not entirely sure if you won last week or not, but considering you're at the top of the championship standings coming into this race, I think it's safe to assume that you did. And now you've got another win under your belt. How are you feeling after that one?
Oh, I'm ecstatic. This is I didn't expect this coming into this season. I got max points last weekend, max points again this week. Hopefully I can keep rolling. Unfortunately my teammate Josh had some little bit of difficulty there. I think he got back up to fifth, so not a bad point night for the team. Um, I got to thank Hale Trailers, Temp Setters, um, Main Mobile, Josh Doobie. He's the one that puts all the money behind it, and I race several leagues. He does it all for me. I just get in and drive. I raced against Tyler in a different league. We always race good. It's fun racing with Tyler. He won last night. I win tonight, so I'm up on him. Well, I shouldn't say that we're even. But all in all, a good night, good series. This late model is probably one of my favorite cars. So I like to drive the crap out of this thing. It's easy to drive. You can definitely drive the wheels off it. But all in all, just fun. I got to thank Matt for putting this on, and Steven. They put all the work on during the week to let us come out and have fun. And thanks for broadcasting. It's nice to see this league have a broadcast, and did a great job tonight. I actually had it playing while I was racing. But congratulations to Tyler and Brandon, and we'll see what we can get back next week.
Yeah, it's great seeing y'all out here, and I look forward to seeing you competing next week at, I believe, next week is Langley. So, gonna
That's
be
my favorite.
quite the
That's my
heck of a
favorite
race.
track of all time.
Well, that's the inspiration you need to head into next race. And you can see Kenny here doing his burnouts. Quite the win by that number 12 driver. Going to make that back to back wins and a very healthy cushion for him heading on to round three next week at the Langley Speedway. And frankly, quite an impressive burnout at that. I'm impressed by that one. That was quite the big one. And now back to our second place finisher and by far the most improved driver this evening with 16 positions gained under his belt. How you doing, Tyler? I feel like I spoke to you just 2 days ago or something like that. It's crazy how that happens.
I'm doing all right. I actually got a headache now. I think just these cars, how tight they get, and you wear your tires down. I thought I was going to get Kenny for a minute. I had the win in sight because, I mean, I want to win. I don't want to win at all costs, but I definitely want to win everything I'm in. I mean, if I'm at the grocery store and somebody beside me is pushing their cart, I want to get in front of them. You know what I mean? Um, but I burned up my right front. So once that happened, I just went in survival mode to try to save second place for the points because I got wrecked out last week. So it wasn't a good points race, but it was a fun time. It was a long way to go from last place to second.
Yeah, a long ways to go from last place to second, but at the same time, there's still a long season ahead of us as well, so I'm sure there's going to be plenty of opportunities for you to make that final pass and pick up the win. Do you reckon if maybe we had another 20, 30 laps, you might have had something to offer for Kenny?
No, I think it was about 15 to go. I don't know if you were watching us or not. When Kenny started pulling away, that's when my right front basically went because I pushed it too hard too soon. But it was fun. He even just said he mentioned it. We were in a race last night, a pretty big one, and I stayed in front of him the whole time, and he raced me real clean. And we've been racing together for about 2 years in different leagues, so we try to show each other a lot of respect. So it was fun. If I had a chance to pass him, I would try it, but not to ruin a race.
Yeah, well, there's nothing like a little bit of a friendly rivalry between two incredibly fast drivers, so I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what you two have to offer for next week at the Langley Speedway.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite tracks, actually. So I can't wait to go there too.
Sounds like a good plan. Before I send you off, though, the microphone is all yours, Mr. McRae. Is there anyone you'd like to thank for getting this 99 machine here in the podium position?
Yeah, I want to thank Palms for putting this together. I want to thank you for the broadcast. I've watched several of yours, and they're pretty interesting, and I enjoy them. So I'll be happy to watch this one tomorrow when I'm at work. Don't tell nobody.
I
Um,
promise I won't.
Also, it's a little early, but I wanted to use this moment to thank the veterans, thank them for their service, and thank them for the blank check they wrote when they signed up. You know, their blank check was their life, possibly, and I want to make sure that they know that they're appreciated. Dropping bombs, of course. Sean, Patrick, and Suka, they're on my team, and we have a good time. I don't think they had the best finish tonight, but we have a good time together in Discord. It's a fixed car in this series, so it's not a lot of setup work, but we talk about a little strategy and stuff. So it's still a good time, spending in a Discord together. So I want to give a shout out to them and appreciate their help.
Well, it's been a blast having you all, and I look forward to seeing you all compete next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Hope you have a good night.
You too, Tyler. And finally, rounding out our top three here tonight, our third place finisher, Mr. Brandon Kiger. What a heck of a race y'all put on here this evening. How are you feeling after 150 laps around probably one of the most difficult to pass tracks on the schedule?
Yeah, we're just worn out after that for sure. We had a good car, and it's just tight racing. It's hard because you can't really pass. You really got to get greedy and put the bumper to somebody if you want to pass them. And with 150 laps, you just try to use your patience and pass as clean as you can. And when you get a chance, take it. And it's just hard to use the bottom here. There really ain't much bottom. It's just one groove, and it just wears you out.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I would certainly be exhausted after running this many laps, but you made it happen. You're here in the podium position, and you made it work one way or another.
Yeah, I gotta thank Zach Edwards. He made us a really good pit call there, and it worked out to our advantage. And come on, I think we started second there on that last restart, and tried to pull up, protect the top, and Tyler made a good move to the bottom and couldn't hold him off there. And I think we could have had something for the 15 if we could have got past him. Um, but I don't know. I ran out of right front like he said he did. I mean, it's just so hard going there at the end and trying to save Tyler to be there at the end and run him down. But Kenny just ran a really good race, smart driving. I mean, he laid back. I think I led the first 25 laps, and I was hoping it was going to play out like that the whole day, but it didn't.
Yeah, sometimes that's just how it ends up, but a podium position, definitely a pretty healthy amount of points going into your bank for heading into the next race. We still got a long season ahead of us, so who knows what might just happen. You got any particular thoughts or feelings on heading over to Langley next week?
Honestly, I love Langley. I don't know how other people feel about it. It's one of my favorite tracks to run. It's just really got to get up on the wheel and drive it, and it's gonna be a grueling race just like here, but in different ways. But I'm looking very forward to it. I think we'll have a good car there, and hopefully end up in first place and put a whole race together.
Well, I certainly look forward to seeing you compete next week, and I wish you luck. But
I
before
appreciate.
I send you out for the evening, there anyone you'd like to thank on the side of that 85/33 machine for getting you here on the podium?
No, no. Well, it's just me and myself here. We don't have no team here, but my buddy Zach comes out and helps us spot and crew chiefs this thing. And just like thank Palms and Matt and them for putting this together. It's very fun. I love driving these late models, and hopefully we can end up there in the point standing at the end of it.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out, Brandon, and I look forward to seeing y'all racing next week.
It sounds good. I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you for the broadcast.
And you heard it here first, race fans. Your top three finishers here at the Thompson Speedway Motorsports Park here tonight for the Thompson 150. Before we close it off for the evening, though, let's take a quick look down at our race results here tonight. There we go. Had a little bit of difficulty. So, for 2 times now this season, picking up the first and the second wins of the season, going to be Mr. Kenny Tripp in that number 12 machine. Just behind him, improving by 16 positions, going to be Tyler McRae in the 99 for Dropping Bombs Racing. Back in the third position in that 85 machine, going to be Mr. Brandon Kiger rounding out our podium with Gerard Lawrence in the 27 just behind him for 4th place. Joshua Dube in that 9 machine going to round out our top 5 after leading a couple of laps here tonight. Back in the 6th position, going to go to Joe Campbell in the 63, and Alb Hewins in the 55 going to be back in 7th. 8th place going to go to Mike Sukup in the 45, with Will Salamone in the 72 in 9th position for Kyle Zattel Racing. And then finally, rounding out our top 10, going to be Sean Patrick in the number 40. Back in 11th, John Friley Tandy in the 126, being back in 11th, with Thomas Mitchell in the 6th, back in 12th. 13th, going to go to Brett Spigner in the 21 after having a bit of a heart-wrencher of a race, being in the front and the back and the front and the back again. He was just all over the place, and he's going to bring it on home in the 13th position. 14th going to go back to Mr. Arthur Hendren in the 37, with the number 26 of Johnny B back in 15th. 16th going to go to Justin Phipps in the number 89, and 17th is going to go to Jason Branch in the 28. Finally, rounding out this 18-car field here tonight, going to be the number 17 of K.C. Duncan. But that's just about all we have here for y'all here at Palms at the Thompson Speedway here tonight. Next week at the same day, same time, we will be heading down to the Langley Speedway for, I believe, 225 laps. So if you thought this one was a tough one on these drivers, wait until you see 225 laps around an incredibly tight and unforgiving bull ring. I think next week we will see a whole lot of close combat between some of these late model drivers. But for tonight, that is all we got for y'all here from the Thompson Speedway. Thank you all for coming out here tonight, and thank you to Palms for giving me the opportunity to put on this show for them. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a good evening, race fans.